Hi, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president.
We will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
And if the yes vote is successful, we will be divided forever.
What does confrontation mean? It means you'll fight for what you believe.
We've got Trump-a-mania running this country, brother.
Unless you're scripted, you're useless.
I was saved by God to make America great again.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Commanding the Narrative. My name is Stephen Tripp. Thank you to everyone who is watching this. Thank you to our wonderful audience that always follows us and contributes so well. If you are watching this live, we are on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. You can contribute in the chat, and also the link to StreamYard is in the chat. Also, if you want to call in, it's all these panel type podcasts are always the best when it's interactive and we can hear from our wonderful audience. But let's introduce everyone. Mr. Dave, right now, welcome. You had a big week.
Thank you, Stephen.
If anyone doesn't know about Dave right now, they should. And you ripped up your Liberal Party membership this week.
Yes, my highly official, authentic membership card that I may have printed myself out of Canva. Symbolically, I teared it up, but in reality, I have officially given my notice to the party. That I tried for a couple of years to get in there and hope we could rebuild it, but I wasn't convinced it was heading in the right direction after this week.
It's a sorry lesson, isn't it?
You don't know until what you don't know, and you get involved and you see what you can do, and then you learn.
So just let everyone know how they can follow your channel, and you also do the Awakened Aussies podcast that you had me on a couple of times as well. So
yeah, just Dave right now on all the social channels.
Dave right now, okay.
Look for Dave right now.
All right.
Do it right now.
Dave, there have been many people before you, and there'll be people after you.
Sadly so.
Yeah.
Richard, John the Boy is watching. Your favorite.
My favorite.
How are you, Richard?
Good, thank you.
Good?
Yeah.
Thank you for having us again. And also we have Rob Cribb, who's the Libertarian Policy Director for New South Wales. Welcome, Rob.
Yes, thank you, Stephen, for having me on.
No, mate, this is the second time you've been on, first time in person. So the last time we had you on was the infamous train wreck episode.
Yes. Well, in a way, it's the third time you've had me on. So once you had me as a very annoying commenter when you had Gemma on, and I was, I said more than Gemma in the comments. The second time you had me on, it was a little bit more official because at least I was over Zoom, but now I'm here in the studio, if that's what we're going to call it. So, I'm progressing up in the world. The next time I'm on, I'll be host.
I like the little libertarian pins that you got in. I like the New South Wales branding far more than the federal branding, I must say.
Yes. So you have tried to give us a bit of crap about our federal branding on this podcast. and we agree with you, right? We give the other states crap about that branding as well. So that's something we're on a unity ticket on, that our federal branding is crap.
No, I like the New South Wales branding. I don't know why the federal guys don't get on board, because it's very, very well, it's polished and it's
one word, Victorians.
Yeah, well, anyway. Yeah. Okay, well, Ron's starting off hot. He says liberalism equals Satanism. Wow. John's very smart. Usually you have a lot of trouble with libertarian appearances. Yes, well, that is true. But we're gonna...
He also gets a lot more ratings, which is why I'm invited back on.
Here we go. No, that's not the reason why we have you back on, but we'll explain that in a second. I need to let everyone know how they can follow us. It's by heading to commandingthenarrative.com. You get all our most recent podcasts. We've done some really good ones recently with Dr. Christopher Reynolds. That was fantastic, that one. Also, Jared Holland was a great one too if you're interested in the energy sector. All the newsletters are up there, any articles I might write, and upcoming events as well. If you're ever wondering how to follow the stream or anything, just head straight to the website, hit the sign up button in the top right hand corner, and you'll get a weekly newsletter from me, which we get a lot of good feedback about. And also, if you want to contribute, hit the donate button. You can contribute to us. It helps to pay for the stream, helps to pay for the website. And most importantly, gives me a very warm and fuzzy feeling inside, which I'm told is the most important thing of all. Now, also, Australians for Better Government is doing really, really well at the moment. if you want to join Australians for Better Government, please head to australiansforbetter.com. I've been elected as the president of Australians for Better Government this week, so that's a real privilege. Thank you, Dave. And we're really going to hit the ground running with that. So, yes, please head to Australians for Better and sign up to be a member. Also, I need to quickly let everyone know about the Light newspaper. They're going to have a new edition of the Light come out this week, I think. So this is issue 16. This is issue 15. Issue 16 is about to come out. So if you want to help distribute the Light, please head to thelightaustralia.com and hit the distribute button, sign up to be a distributor. You just have to pay for the copies. I think they're about 15 cents each, and then you can distribute them for free. And with all the censorship going around, these hard copy newspapers are a great way of getting information out there. So please support everything that's happening with the Light. All right, there's a lot more I could probably talk about, but we probably should get into it now. This post went out on the Libertarian X page a week or so ago. It was just advertising the new Northern Beaches branch, which Doug Rennie has set up. Congratulations to Doug with a great effort there. We've had Doug on the show previously. Now, there were some comments put on here that have since been deleted, Rob, so that's interesting. But they got sent through to me, so I have the comments. What it related to was the last time we had Richard Storch on, and I got a lot of feedback about this as well. A lot of people that are good friends of yours, Richard, were
very upset
with you.
Yeah.
With your comments about full-term abortion.
Yeah.
And that led to that led to Craig Bullock. Now, Craig Bullock is a member of the Liberal Party. He was going to be one of their council candidates for Frenchs Forest, and he could have been elected, but with all the chaos that happened with the Liberal Party not nominating in the Northern Beaches, he wasn't given that opportunity. But he questioned the Libertarian Party on this comment that Richard made, which I'll play in a moment. And this was a response from the Libertarian Party. We appreciate the concern and the opportunity to clarify. Richard is a non-financial member who volunteers his time at various campaigns. He is not part of the executive. He has no input into policies, and his opinion is his own. So they're completely throwing you under the bus there, Richard.
No, they've started their own position. I don't think they threw me under the bus at all.
We do not have a policy on abortion, and as such, we offer all elected members a conscious vote on the issue. It's not just the conservative Christian faction within our party who objects to this late-term abortion. Most of us believe late-term abortion is murder. I hope this answers your question. The topic of abortion itself is very complex, which is correct. This is a very complex issue. And even Rob Cribb chimed in and said, "Hey, Craig, I'm the New South Wales policy director of our party. I'm friends with Richard, but I find his comments on the topic totally reprehensible. I'm personally extremely pro-life, but the party has no formal position because libertarian theory can lead you in different directions on this one. We allow elected representatives a conscious vote. Many of our current state executive members have attended pro-life rallies." So that was a response from the Libertarian Party. So if anyone's wondering what we're all talking about, I've got the clip of what Richard actually said, and then we'll get some comments from Richard and also from Rob. So let me just get everything going. Here we go.
Concluded our interviews, and the most shocking thing for me was that not one of them knew that it was legal to have abortions in Queensland and all over Australia right up until birth.
Did you guys aware of that?
No, I didn't. I'm aware of that. It's an issue which bitterly divides the Libertarian Party, so much so that we try not to talk about it.
What's the Libertarians' policy on that?
Oh, at the moment we support abortion on demand. Period. End of story. But
okay, so that was your comment, Richard. Do you want to clarify?
Sure. I wasn't aware that the party had changed its policy a couple of years ago from a policy of support to a non-policy, which is conscience vote, which is the same as every other political party, which is no policy at all. So I was wrong in the first place, but in the second place, that is the law. That is what happens in this country up until 23 weeks. And anyone that wants to argue with that is just arguing against the law, and it's stupid.
Rob, we've had you on to be able to address this issue so we can clarify it with the audience to make it clear what the libertarian policy is. I mean,
I think you've made it clear before, haven't you, Rob?
Well, I haven't said anything yet. He read out a Facebook comment that I wrote. But I think ultimately, like, libertarians agree that murder should be illegal. And I think almost everyone who isn't a psychopath agrees with that. And like non-libertarians, libertarians have some disagreements on where life begins, and where life begins will determine what is murder and what isn't. So libertarianism doesn't answer when life begins. It answers questions on the role of the state. When is it okay to initiate violence upon another person? It doesn't answer questions upon metaphysical sort of issues or scientific issues, if you want to look at it that way, of when a life begins. And like non-libertarians, some libertarians, such as myself, believe life begins at conception, and any termination of life that isn't in self-defense is murder. Some libertarians believe that life begins at birth, such as some non-libertarians believe. And most libertarians, such as the same as most non-libertarians, believe something in between. So libertarianism doesn't answer this question. And libertarians as a group are, too small a number in this country of the West at the moment to divide ourselves into multiple parties depending on exactly what our abortion policy should be. So a party has no policy. But I will say in New South Wales, our state executive is dominated by pro-life activists, not just pro-life believers. So Victor Tay, myself, Gemma Noisi, Ashton Solomon, Caleb Cochrane, even Ross Cameron when he was in Parliament, these people are very pro-life. Our New South Wales division is, and our Victorian division is more pro-choice. And the reason that we can stick together as a party is because we recognise that libertarianism itself doesn't answer this question. Other things have to answer that question for you. So the Libertarian Party is bound by a belief in smaller government, the non-aggression principle, private property, and we allow differing views on abortion. And if abortion is the thing that you want to cast your vote on, as I can imagine as someone who is very pro-life, that's something that would be high up the list of many pro-life voters. We encourage you to ask your libertarian candidate in the upper and lower house what their personal view is. So they will tell you, our party has no view. My personal view is this. And if being pro-life or pro-choice or whatever is a deal breaker for you, don't vote for our candidate in that particular area, because we are bound by different things other than that. The libertarian philosophy doesn't answer that question. Now, no libertarian is only a libertarian, right? So libertarianism says this is what the government should do. This is, the justifiable use of force. This is the role of the state. But no one can only be that. So there are some libertarians who are Christians, who are, rational humanists, whatever you want to, group them into.
And there are some like me.
And there are some like him. There's some like Richard who just want to kill unborn children as much as possible. Yeah, right. So that's what I'm saying here. So libertarianism is about the role of the state. And when you vote in an election, that is effectively what you're voting on. So you are voting on what should the government do in the next term. And usually it's not going to be about defining when life begins. And occasionally it might be. If that's your thing, you should ask libertarian candidates where they stand. But I will say you should ask candidates from other parties. So I know Family First have a quite explicit abortion policy. One Nation have a vague one. The other parties don't have one either. And people ask the libertarians what our policy is because they erroneously think that libertarians are all just pro-life, abortion on demand, like Mr. Storch here. But most of us, especially in New South Wales, aren't that. And our policy is to allow our candidates a conscience vote. Now, most of our candidates in New South Wales certainly will not support late-term abortions or letting babies born alive die. This isn't something that any actual candidates I've endorsed actually believe. So
that's a deal breaker for me, is it?
Well, you haven't applied to the candidate, right?
Weren't you a candidate in the local government elections?
No.
No.
Well, if he was, I didn't adopt it, right?
do have a question here from John the Boy. Do the Libertarians support abortions paid by Medicare?
Absolutely not. So we certainly do not believe that especially contentious issues like this should be funded by people who really disagree with them. And it's something like even Emma Hurst in the New South Wales Upper House will put up bills where she's really concerned about animal welfare.
So she's the animal justice.
Yeah, she's the animal justice MLC. And sometimes we vote with her and the shooters are annoyed. But our argument then is the bill she's put up just stops taxpayer funding on slaughtering animals, right? So you can think that killing animals is fine. I'm a meat eater. I think killing animals in certain circumstances is fine. But if you don't agree with that, your taxes shouldn't be used to fund that, right? So if someone wants to go and kill animals for meat, they should do it out of their own pocket. And certainly, like, my view is that abortion is murder. But even beyond that, people who are pro-choice in the party don't believe in taxpayer-funded abortions.
Because
I do.
As someone who,
well, he's not really a member of the party, so
I'm completely not a member of the party. But my understanding of libertarianism is you within private property, do what you like as long as you're not hurting other people. And so where this debate draws a line is an unborn baby a people
exactly
that you are doing harm to?
Yeah.
Some people say no,
and some people say yes.
Yeah. I mean, as a Christian myself, I'd say yes. The babies are life. So that's where the differentiation with libertarianism comes in. That's like, are you harming a person, or are you harming a clump of cells that is a clump of cells today, but tomorrow is a human, and it can't be a miracle, like, because they probably don't believe in miracles as atheists. A lot of them. I don't know where you stand on the
on the extreme left of the party. Let me tell you, I've been told by Rob today that I'm on the extreme left of the party,
and he's not even in the party; he's still the extreme left. But yes, no, you raise a good point there, right? So it's the general population is split on abortion. Libertarians are split on abortion as well, because libertarianism doesn't solve that issue. Libertarianism doesn't solve every issue. It solves what the government should be doing most of the time,
which is generally as little as possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
John the Boy says, my view of libertarianism is getting a bit better. But then he goes on to say, but I wouldn't vote for Richard.
Don't worry, I wouldn't vote for Richard either.
But here's a scenario that I just want to question you on this, because I like your answer, but I'm still a little bit concerned about the conscious vote, because I think you do need to take a stand somewhere. Now, here's a hypothetical situation. I want to stress hypothetical, but in the upcoming federal election, you have a candidate like Gemma Naosi in Southwestern Sydney, and someone comes up to her in the polling booth and says, Gemma, what's your stance on abortion? And Gemma says, I'm pro-life. And that person says, great, I'm going to vote for Gemma Naosi. And they go into the polling booth and they're so impressed with Gemma's and what she stands for that she says, not only am I going to vote 1 for Gemma Naosi, but I'm also going to vote Libertarian 1 in the Senate. Now, your Senate candidate's Craig Kelly, who I'm assuming is pro-life as well. But in this hypothetical scenario, Craig Kelly's not the Senate candidate. It's actually Mr. Richard Storch.
Ooh.
And if both of those people get elected, in the lower house, Gemma would vote against abortion. But the government of the day is pushing abortion and goes to the upper house. Richard's going to vote for that abortion.
No, not abstain.
But you could vote for it.
No, I wouldn't.
Anyway, let's get the answer from Rob.
Yeah, no, that is like that's
and again, hypothetical. It's likely not going to happen.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna talk about Craig's views or what Richard would do in the upper house. I understand that the problem here that if we say we're a conscience vote party and someone asks our candidate on the ground and they say one thing and that person votes for us in both houses and the upper house candidate does the other thing, I understand the problem here. I agree it's a problem, right? So in an ideal world, right, I think the Libertarian Party should be pro-life, but we're not big enough to like divide that way and split half of our members. But I will say, like, the other parties are the same. So as I said, so One Nation has
very good point.
Kind of a sort of a vague so our policy, despite what Richard thinks that our policy was at the time, and he said it was there earlier, right? It wasn't even what he thinks it was before then. So before then, we had a policy of no criminalization of abortion in the first 2 trimesters, right? Which I disagreed with. I thought it should be illegal, but Richard just thought it was abortion on demand. We have never had that policy. But One Nation have if you have a look at their website, they have a pro-life policy, right? And I agree with everything it says. I would actually go much further personally, not for my party. But it's kind of a vague no babies born alive, no late term abortions thing, which I think is a good thing. But that's their policy. Family First has a harder one. None of the other parties have a policy at all, other than the Greens saying that they believe in abortion demand and they want to make sure that abortions are available to everyone. They want to make sure there's government funding. So the Liberal Party and the Labor Party don't have abortion policies, right? So it's the same problem there. If you vote for the Liberals and you ask a lower house candidate, what's your position on abortion? They're going to give you an answer, and it might not track to who you're voting for in the upper house. And especially if you vote for the Liberals in the upper house, especially New South Wales state politics, you're voting for 15 people, right? You get like number 7 elected there. So you're actually voting for 7 candidates. Who knows what they all think on abortion?
Yeah.
So this is a position that I will say that parties other than Family First and the Greens are divided on. And this is one of the reasons that, I'm a libertarian and I disagree with Family First on, a few things, some of their economic policies and euthanasia. But I respect Family First as a pro-life person, because I know if I'm voting for someone Family First, they're getting someone pro-life in. But I disagree with them on other things, so I'm a libertarian. But unless you're voting for Family First or the Greens, you don't know what your member that you're voting for, upper house or lower house, is doing on abortion unless you ask them. It's not just a libertarian issue. That's a problem. So that is ubiquitous across all the parties, that they don't have policies on it and they allow members' conscience votes. Labor doesn't allow conscience votes on anything, but they still don't actually have an explicit policy, to my knowledge.
Correct.
John the Boy says that's why when the federal election comes up, I'll scrutinize individual candidates rather than parties. I think you should be doing that anyway, in any circumstance.
Yeah.
So no, look, thank you for clearing that up, Rob, and hopefully that sets the record straight. Richard led some people down the wrong path, but I think we've got them back on the right track. And
it's okay. It's good for them to be challenged and have to think for themselves.
No, that's good. So all right. So
and even though I hate Richard's view on that, and I have insulted him a few times, he is still a friend. He's just very wrong on that topic.
That's okay. I think you're wrong too.
Okay, well, look, we might come back to libertarianism later in the podcast, because the federal election is coming up, and it'll be a good opportunity to talk to you about other policies.
Shut up! No,
Dan's not here, but shut up, Richard.
No, I'd like to make a point. The point was that the whole context of the conversation was about the divergence of opinion within the Libertarian Party and how tolerant the party is of that, as opposed to every other party that suppresses dissent. And that was the context of the discussion. Abortion just came up as a subject to illustrate, but it wasn't actually about abortion. It's just that you had all these maniacs, coming like trout out of the water about it.
So Craig Bullock is a maniac.
Oh, he's an idiot.
And after abortion came up, Steve just happened to have that clip just on hand straight away, right? That wasn't pre-planned at all. It just came up. Sure, Richard.
Well, Steve can be a little opportunistic.
Which clip?
You posted that clip of them taking around the heavily pregnant woman.
No, we had no. I mean, I don't know what Richard's going to say, so we played that clip first, and then the comments came after that.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that Richard just saying that it just came up opportunistically as an example is wrong. If you had that clip prior,
I didn't expect. Well, I knew Richard's stance, but I didn't say that I didn't expect.
Richard I'd agree with you here. Yeah. You played the clip, and he said the thing about abortion. It didn't just come up as an example of libertarian divergence. Yeah, I think he's wrong. Yeah,
it did. I sure it did.
Anyway, all right. Let's move on, because at the moment this Donald Trump is back as president, and everything's going at 1,000 miles an hour. The big thing to come up and the big thing to talk about tonight is his stance on Gaza, and he wants to own it all and has a long-term vision for Gaza.
He doesn't want to own.
Well, let's
I think you're getting ahead of yourself.
That's what he said. We said we will own it. Let's hear it.
He wants sovereignty.
We should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it.
What was that? What did he say? We'll own it. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Anyway,
will he own this job or own the job though?
Dave hasn't had a chance to talk. What do you think about this, Dave?
I don't think he wants to own it. I think in the context he's talking about we're going to own the job. Like we're just going to get the job done and we're going to own getting it done.
Okay, fair enough.
I agree.
Yeah, I think this is him again. This is like tariffs on Mexico, tariffs on Canada. We're just gonna go and like lock the Chinese out of the Panama Canal and all these big deals. He is, starting off with a big bluster and putting out a big, hairy, audacious kind of threat, as it were, like it's a friendly threat.
Gambit, it's called.
And then go, if you don't want this, and then let the players pick up the pieces and scramble to try and prevent that happening and give him a better solution and go, hang on. Instead of you doing that, how about we do that? And he's like, the sort of concept of being a multiplier, allow the people in your team to fix the problem for you because that they've got the intelligence. They've just been choosing not to empower the region to fix itself.
Yeah, I think that's really true. But also he wants to enroll, Saudi and the wealthy Arab Emirates to finance it.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants Jordan and Egypt to supply the manpower and space and everything else and opportunity. So he wants to enroll all the other players and engage them in the whole process.
I'm invested in the success of the region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's incredibly
because at the moment, we took in 3,000. We took in 3,000 refugees from Gaza and neighboring Egypt and Jordan took in 0.
Yeah,
so there's something.
I'd like to take them in and send them out straight away.
Right, but I mean, look, who knows what the future is? Could there be an F1, a Gaza GP in the future? They seem to like having them over there.
Gaza GP. Look, I mean, they can make anything out of it that they want.
Yeah, I mean, look at Qatar and Abu Dhabi. Like they put these random GP events in the middle of these desert countries. Why not put it in the Riviera, as Trump calls it? It could be the Riviera of the Middle East.
Mm.
Well, I've got another clip of Trump saying some more on this. So let's hear from the president.
You have to learn from history. History is, just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could.
Now, you look at Gaza on the map, it's right along the coastline there. I mean, you read Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, and he spent years walking around Manhattan and New York looking for opportunities. That's probably how his mind works. He sees this massive coastline and thinks, wow, we could really do something here. He had a similar approach to North Korea. And I remember, I probably said this on the podcast at the time when October 7th first happened. I felt that this conflict needed an international solution. Now, this is not a perfect solution, but it's something, and it's better than what I've heard so far.
It's progress.
Yeah. So
I agree.
I mean, he's getting attacked for it. People are saying it's good, crazy, but I don't see any other better solution.
There isn't one.
Rob, what do you think?
Okay, so in terms of this idea that he doesn't really want to own it, and he's using it metaphorically or whatever, I think his follow-up comments, and he also did make, I'm going to call it a tweet, but I think he called it a truth. In when he said, that after the US has, finished making it, great again, they'll hand it over to Israel. It certainly seemed to imply that they were going to own it for some period, and then basically, have the next step forward in greater Israel. So I think that's certainly at least what he's threatening. Now, whether or not he intends on that being the outcome is another matter, because Trump does like to make threats just to, as an opening bargaining position. We were talking about before, the art of the deal. So he might be doing that. But I certainly don't agree with this idea that he didn't mean that they were going to own it. No, that's exactly what he meant. He meant they were going to own it. Now, whether he actually intends to own it or not is another matter. If he does intend to own it, I will say, I think the criticism is extremely justified. I don't think the US empire building in the Middle East has ever been a good thing. And I don't think just because it's Trump, it's going to be better. I don't think that the US is going to own territory in the desert near Israel. This is absurd.
Going to annex it. That's hysterical.
Well, no,
they're not going to do that.
That is his threat, though. Like, whether or not he intends to go through with it, that is explicitly what he's threatening. Now, it's good if he threatens it and it doesn't happen. No. That's a good thing.
Let's walk back to the start. The start is you've got a territory which is disputed. That means no one owns it,
Well, that's not true, right? So if I say I own your house and that makes that's disputed, it doesn't mean no one owns it. You still own it. I'm wrong.
Do you want the history lesson on this? It was owned by the British until 1948. Then Egypt occupied it. Then in 1967, Israel occupied it. It's actually a disputed territory. No one owns it.
No, just because something is disputed doesn't mean no one owns it.
No one owns it.
It doesn't have its own Gazan government. It doesn't have.
It's just a piece of dirt that no one can agree on who actually is entitled to have it. So, like with two parents, like with a parent that sees two children fighting over something, fighting over a toy, the only solution possible is to take the toy away and say, stop it.
Well, the idea that the US is the parent of the world has only resulted in destruction and decay.
I'm not even going to go down.
Absolutely not.
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. What I am going to say is that when the US has done whatever it intends to do with Gaza, the idea that it can have some sort of power vacuum and security vacuum on the border of not just Israel, but Egypt is ludicrous. That is what has happened, and that is what has caused all the problems. You cannot, no sovereign country can put up with a power vacuum on its immediate border. We wouldn't, I can assure you.
No, but that doesn't mean that the United States should come in and intervene.
That is what it means.
It doesn't mean the United States should come in and intervene if we have a power vacuum.
Who else is going to do it?
It doesn't matter.
Done such a great job over the last 60 years. No. I mean, come on. Who else is going to do it?
Imagine going to a Libertarian Party meeting.
Yeah. Well, he's not a member. He's a petulant.
You keep saying he's not a member, but he's the one you trot out there on the polling booths to stand out there.
He's a dedicated volunteer for actual libertarians.
All right. Well, you mentioned the destruction and the decay. I think it's important to put this into perspective of how much destruction that's happened in Gaza.
About 2/3 of Gaza's pre-war structures, or about 170,000 buildings, have been damaged or flattened during 16 months of conflict. A recent assessment carried out by the United Nations estimated the cost of clearing more than 50 million tonnes of rubble would be up to $1.9 billion and take more than 20 years.
So you can see from those images, it looks like a scene out of World War II where, Dresden or Nuremberg were completely...
Cologne, Hamburg, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is a massive task. It's not like it hasn't happened before.
There's a very important difference, You know what the difference is? That before the RAF and the United States Air Force did what they did, they didn't give any warning to the civilian population, whereas the Israelis did.
Come off it.
There's a very important difference.
What I like about Trump's plan here compared to what they talked about with Ukraine, to compare, because Ukraine needs a lot of rebuilding as well whenever that conflict ends.
Mm-hmm.
The word with Ukraine is BlackRock gets to go in and own all the buildings, and BlackRock gets to do all the work, whereas here, I haven't heard the word BlackRock. It's more of a coalition effect. Let's get the Saudis and the Jordans and the other Middle Eastern countries involved and fundraising and, put Aramco banners or whatever all over it.
Mm.
It's a different proposition to letting
right.
an arguably globalist shadowy entity go and acquire more
wants
land
to make a profit.
Versus, let's have this
don't
coalition.
Forget that part of it, Dave.
Well, profit is great. I'd rather someone who wants to make a profit than a global shadowy organization that is the United States government. So I would rather BlackRock than that.
But peace is good in that region for everyone.
Yeah.
Dearly Maz says, poor form Storchy. Realist Mama says it's the commanding the narrative octagon. So like you were saying, it's good. I like that.
But Dana White's in town, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, maybe he's sending this. We can have a showdown between Richard and Rob. Maybe that'd be fun. Is there?
It happens every week at a party meeting.
I'm interested, Rob, because you're the New South Wales policy director. We've just spoken about two very, very complex issues, abortion and this Gaza issue, and I don't think there's a real concrete answer that you can give for both. How do you approach that from a policy standpoint?
Well, certainly the Gaza issue from a libertarian policy standpoint is that we're setting policy for the New South Wales government and the Australian government And our policy for that is like Australia first, right? We shouldn't be intervening. So we welcome members that have vastly different opinions on what's happening in Israel and Gaza. And the reason we can do that is that we all agree the Australian government should stay out of it. So that's our policy. That's not a no policy. That's abortion is a no policy, right? Because we just disagree. Libertarians don't disagree on the Australian government staying out of it. So we don't think the Australian government should be supplying aid or sanctions or anything to either side. That's a libertarian position.
So you said Australian first. Trump is very big on America first. He's
Yeah.
not a libertarian. I know,
No.
like obviously with tariffs and things.
Well, I don't think this is America first. I think this is Israel first policy.
Okay.
Interestingly, when I was on the Awakened Aussies podcast on Thursday night, it came up a similar thing that Trump should stay out of it. It's not his domain. America shouldn't be there. But one of the panelists, I think it was Bob, said that it is a issue for America because all this conflict that's happening within Gaza is getting exported to the world. So we're seeing protests here in Australia and in America and places like that. So we do have some responsibility for the international world to solve these issues because we're dealing with it here in this country.
Well, I think the reason that we're seeing protests all over the West is because people have this idea that the West is the daddy of the world, right? So if something's happening in some sort of Middle Eastern territory dispute, people expect Western countries to go and do something about it, and I think that's wrong. And when Western countries do pick either side, we're going to have protests. I think if we just said the Australian government's going to stay out of it, and I think the US government should stay out of it either, but obviously the New South Wales Libertarian Party doesn't set US foreign policy. But if they stayed out of it, people would have less expectation that they agreed with them on it, right? So either way, right? So people who are pro-Israel or anti-Israel or pro-Palestine or anti-Palestine, they're going to be annoyed at what the Australian government is doing. If the Australian government said, not our circus, not our monkeys, they'd be less inclined to be annoyed about whatever they were doing. We're funding one side and then putting sanctions on the same side. Donald Trump is funding the destruction of Gaza and then trying to put it back together. These things are...
That's another statement.
Yes, right. But he's like the US government under Biden funded both sides of that war. And certainly the Syrian civil war, they funded both sides to actually make it happen in the first place. So when you have this sort of thing, everyone's going to be annoyed. We should have a non-interventionist foreign policy. So our defense policy should be focused on defense and not fixing other countries' problems. And Australian taxpayer money should not be used to go and solve the problems of Somalia or North Korea or, yes, Israel. And it seems to be some sort of a third rail. And I think just no, right?
Do you think that stand, though, would stop like the protest this weekend even in Melbourne happening? Because Australia, we're not involved.
I think we'd have less of it.
The lefties
right?
and the Greens and the Hamas supporters. Do you think that would stop them from coming?
I think we'd have less of it. No, I think especially. I think especially if we made it a consistent thing. If we said, "Oh, we're only like not intervening in this specific thing," it wouldn't happen overnight. But if we don't see protests like this in Switzerland or Liechtenstein. You know why? Because they're neutral.
We're a different country.
Well, we should be not a different country, right? We should be more like Switzerland and Liechtenstein and stay out.
Great question, Dave. By the way,
we should stay out of foreign conflicts. And if we did it consistently, people would not protest expecting us to get involved on their preferred side.
In that case, disclaimer: I'm not saying this recklessly to incite any form of violence. No violence or force is being advocated here at all. I have to say that because of the new hate crime laws that are coming.
You might end up in jail.
But we should, if there are people that are so anti-Australian, they're so pro-terrorist organizations and support of other parts of the world, if they are here on visas, maybe they should go back to where they're from.
Absolutely.
And we should cancel their visas and get them out of here because they're clearly not here for Australia first.
Yeah, so I do believe people who come to this country should try and leave their domestic politics at home. I'm not sure whether we should make it a visa requirement or whatever. There is also the problem that some of these people who are out on the streets protesting, and being out on the streets protesting isn't inherently a bad thing. But if you're, engaging in rioting or vandalism or violence is bad. But some of these people are born in Australia, right? So if you go to a pro-Palestine rally, you're going to see a lot of overweight white chicks, right? They're not from Saudi Arabia, right?
Even I've talked about.
You can't deport them.
The protesters that threatened the Maya Christmas window thing in Melbourne. the woman who rang up the radio, she sounded like a skippy Lebanese kind of person. So she sounded like she's been raised in Australia, but she's from sort of that Muslim background. And she was the one shutting down the Christmas celebration. So yeah, you're right. Some have been born here. Like we have a multi-generational issue now. And when you look at the census data, the percentage of people with both parents born outside of Australia is staggering in the latest census data. Staggering.
Yeah. So deportations aren't going to fix this problem. And again, I don't think the protests themselves are necessarily bad. Like if you really care about something and you want to go and peacefully protest, I think that's fine. Some of the protests haven't been peaceful, which is another problem. And that there are people that are coming to Australia and they're bringing their domestic politics with them. And I'm not sure the solution to that. Maybe, a visa requirement is that you don't do that, but I'm not sure how you police it. But I think we would see less of this stuff if people didn't expect the Australian government or the US government or the West in general to be seen as some sort of, world police. I think if we just said, no, look, that's not our problem. People can be free to have opinions on what is a centuries-long border dispute between ethnic and religious groups. There are very complicated things going on there. People should be free to have opinions on that, but the Australian government shouldn't get involved. And if you're going to be protesting in Australia, right, you shouldn't be expecting Benjamin Netanyahu to care. So if you're protesting in Australia, it's basically a protest demanding some Australian elite organization, whether it be government or corporation, do something. And I don't think they should be doing anything about this. I think that's a problem for the Middle Eastern people who live there. And I don't think we should be spending taxpayer money or potentially even time on this podcast debating it. But that's my view.
I don't disagree on the world policing, but do you think the world hasn't benefited from the concept of the Pax Americana, that the strong US has, shipping lanes and reduced piracy and open trade? And there's been some benefits from now. Yes, undoubtedly, CIA have been involved in a lot of overreach in where they've got involved in foreign politics. But at a general concept, have we not benefited from a strong US military presence giving peace to the world?
I agree.
Like Australians might have, in terms of the fact that we've had to spend less on a military, thinking that, look, if we get attacked, the US will just bail us out. I'm not sure the world has. There's certainly been some benefits, right? So Hitler made the trains run on time, and the mafia taking protection money will make sure that you won't get attacked by the rival gang, right? So that there are benefits to every authoritarian regime.
That equivalence is quite a stretch.
No, it's not, right?
What I would say is that American intelligence and Israeli intelligence through American intelligence has saved us from a lot of civil disorder and maybe terrorist attacks, and certainly a lot of expenditure on defense.
Well, it saves Australia expenditure on defense.
If you want to spend a lot more on defense and a lot more on intelligence, then compromise our alliance with the states.
Well,
if we have to send a little expeditionary force to some little police action somewhere around the world, I don't think that's a very high price to pay.
Well, in terms of terrorism, I think US intelligence has created far more terrorism, and our alliance with it has created a bigger target on our back. Again, there are very few terrorist attacks in Switzerland and Liechtenstein. And that's not just
because no one gives a shit about them.
Exactly. We should make terrorists not give a shit about us. You know why they give a shit about us? Because we're the United States.
Not because of what we do.
No, it's because we're United States' little brother, right?
Oh, rubbish.
Absolutely. Okay. We are the deputy sheriff in the Asia Pacific.
Okay. Catherine says, Stephen, spelled my name wrong, by the way, can you encourage your guests to listen to each other's opinions and stop interrupting the speaker? I like this. I like the lively debate.
I give Rob a lot of airtime, a lot of latitude. I don't interrupt him nearly as much as I would like to.
All right, let's talk about something that we probably will agree on. I know this is a Australians for Better Government policy. I'm assuming it's also a libertarian policy. This is to do with Elon Musk and DOGE.
And I would just say a strong message to Democrats who are out there pretending to be outraged about the long list of crap that this administration is cutting, federal waste and funding, like $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, $20 million on a new Sesame Street show in Iraq, $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. I could go on, and I'm happy to provide this list to every single.
Okay, so that's one clip where she mentioned a whole bunch of things. There's actually another clip where she goes even further. So let's get that one first before we get your guys' comments.
And here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look. Because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk.
There they go.
Can you just imagine where Australia's taxpayer money is going? I'm assuming that we're the same here.
Oh, we're worse. I mean, all the millions of dollars that Penny Wong has given to UNRWA.
Oh,
you know. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. Even when she found out and she was informed that it was going straight to Hamas.
I'm just trying to picture Karine Jean-Pierre delivering a press conference like that.
Oh, she couldn't. She doesn't have the spine, the backbone, the force.
Well, when you're out in the street, you'd see the little puppet stick. Like it'd be harder to do out there.
Yeah.
Ron says sounds like the Aussie budget.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't be far wrong there.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if as much of our stuff goes into sort of foreign stuff, but certainly domestically, there's so much waste. Just look at the NDIS and how that's rotted. You know, it's contentious to say, but the Aboriginal industry and the waste that goes in there, where clearly it's not addressing need, it's not fixing problems, it's just throwing money, good money after bad, just paying people to be victims.
Yeah.
Rob,
it's paying a bureaucratic edifice. But I mean, also look at all the blackmail money that we distribute all through the Pacific.
Rob, from your perspective, is what Elon Musk doing a good thing? Would you like to see something similar happen here in Australia?
Oh, I think it's glorious. So our party couldn't be a bigger fan of the DOGE. So Elon Musk and Vivek, who's now stepped aside, but also the fact that he's getting Ron Paul on board. So Ron Paul was the reason that a lot of libertarian members in Australia became libertarians. So he ran the Republican Party as president in 2008, 2012 on a libertarian message, took people towards libertarianism. Lots of people in our party are like Ron Paul libertarians, and he is an advisor to DOGE, and it's just slash and burn, and we love it.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge Ron Paul fan. Ron says Albo gave money to start a PNG NRL team. Isn't that fascism? Well, it's an example of money going overseas. I think it was like $60 million to fund
and I think part of that, not
it was what did I say?
600.
600 million.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
And
600.
And not the back elbow. Like, I understand that there's meant to be a premise of securing the Pacific and stopping the Chinese influence in there. But is a footy team the way to do it? I'm not sure if that's the best use of money for it.
I've heard of a lot worse ideas than that one. I mean, that might be expensive and it might be out there, but it's like, at least you'll see something.
Right. Which is why that particular one is
like
contentious.
throwing money off the Harbour Bridge. At least you see where it goes. You know?
Yeah.
It's just crippling for workers. I mean, people out there that are really struggling, and there's no incentive to work. The more you work, the heavier you seem to get taxed.
And
there's high interest rates, there's high inflation, and then the government is just taking all this money and just throwing it away and on things in foreign countries. And the everyday worker in America, look, I think it's happening here in Australia too. We're not seeing anything long lasting in our country. There's no national building infrastructure projects. There's no
well, look,
high-speed
what
rail
we need
projects.
To do is applaud the government. Like every time they do something for us, instead of saying, well, what else are you going to do?
When do they do something for us?
Well, they've got lots of ideas about what they've done for us. Okay, so we need to give them much more acknowledgement and appreciation, and then they won't waste our money giving it to other people because
they've done heaps for us. They've bent us over.
All we want them to do for us is actually cut our taxes. I don't want any more big government projects. I think this one,
serious.
Rugby league is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We don't need it to be government funded to have a team in another country. I think it's absurd.
I agree with you, but
I
you're
agree.
still too serious.
I think then the other contentious thing is like, oh, we need to keep China away. But meanwhile, we're going to secure our entire energy infrastructure buying hardware
Yeah,
from China.
Good point.
So, no, China. No. And 600 million, what could we do from investing in our own sovereign defense industries, naval drones, etc., to use to deploy and protect the coastlines and the waters versus, like you said, sponsoring billion-dollar sport.
Yeah, I mean, we've got all these people in Israel and Ukraine that could come over here and give us actual on-the-ground experience of what we should be building and who we should build it for and the whole bit. And it's like the opportunity's all there, and instead we're talking about buying submarines.
Right, and I heard someone say they try to actually make drones, like intelligent drones using only technology from Five Eyes countries. So rather than buying any equipment from China, like DJI, amazing drones, but all made in China. So who knows what's happening with all the data. But I do love my DJI drone. But it's almost impossible to build a functioning, well-working. Apparently, this was a story I heard. I can't remember the source. I can't reference it. But they're saying it's really hard to actually build good sort of quality drones purely with Western technology. And so there's a problem there. We actually need to improve those sort of sovereign manufacturing capacities so that we can build these next generation things. I think Pete Hegseth's talking about this, saying we need to rethink warfighting in the next generation because we are spending billions of dollars on legacy technology, whereas you look what's happening in these sort of countries where they're getting scrappy and their drone warfare is happening, and the US has got no investment in that. Australia, we've got no investment in that, whether it's aerial or naval or whatnot.
Market's open.
Okay, so look, I mean, Pete Dutton's talking about a DOGE starting up here in Australia. Jacinta Price is going to head it. Let's see it when it happens, I suppose. But look, I think there's
They've got to
value
get into government first.
Yeah, they've got to get into government first. Maybe we can talk about that in a bit. But here's an issue that Dave, I know, is very passionate about. It's this censorship bill that has gone through. I'm calling it a censorship bill. I know people call it hate speech and different things, but this is Albo talking about it.
I have tried to do as Prime Minister is to turn down the heat on some of the issues as well. People will say things on social media that they would never say to you face to face, and they engage in a way that seems to ramp up from 0 to 11 straight away. We need to be able to have civil discourse in this country. I don't want to see the sort of polarization that we see in some of our democracies around the world happen here.
All right, my big question is it the government's responsibility to get involved in this? Or are they just using it as an opportunity to clamp down even more?
Grandstand and
It's
it's
virtue
important. Yeah.
Like there's already laws to stop all this. And then I called out in content I did this week before it passed, the existing hate speech laws in the Criminal Crimes Act 80.2, etc., cover race, ethnicity, religion, ethnic origin, all the things you did say that Jewish people are. They could categorize on all of that. The main things this bill changed from a discriminatory point of view was adding in all the LGBTIQ categories plus disability, and then the coalition managed to bolt on hate speech towards buildings. Surely we have property damage laws already,
and mandatory sentencing,
and then they put the mandatory sentencing in as well. But no one. I've seen no news commentating. I think Sky, now that it's passed, Caleb and maybe Ron mentioned a little bit today that reckless without reckless intent. Well, I can't remember the exact wording. That says you don't even need to intend someone's going to commit violence. You're reckless as to whether your statements may encourage someone to commit violence. Yeah. And so now it's just thought police.
I mean, who in the Australian public is asking for this? And is this really the country that we want to live in, where everyone's walking around on eggshells?
Australian public are going, yeah, crack down on all the terror attacks. That's great. Safety. This is more trading freedom for safety. But the problem is with the apathy of the people and the lack of reporting in the mainstream media. And look, on the independent media, not enough people. Like I said, I'm one of the few that I've seen actually calling out some of this sort of issue with the word changes. People don't know. They just go, oh yeah, mandatory sentencing, tougher criminals. Yeah, Nazism bad. So that's good. Where personally, I'd rather see people walking around with Schwarz tickets so I know who they are. Like,
I agree.
Yeah.
I
Jo-
absolutely agree.
John the Boy says it happened so quickly there was hardly even a chance to oppose it. So the senators that did oppose it, I'll bring it up on the screen now. There weren't many of them. Fatima Payman, David Pocock, Terrell from the what's her first?
Jackie Lambie.
Jackie Lambie Network, Alex Hantick, Jared Rennick, and Ralph Babette. It's not a huge amount of opposition, and the biggest thing for me is that the two names missing. Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Roberts, where were they? Malcolm abstained and Pauline apparently wasn't there. You would hope that I would like to ask, how does One Nation voters feel about that the fact that they didn't stand up on this issue?
Well, they have given, I think now 4 different answers on why that's true. And I will qualify this by saying I think Malcolm Roberts is a great man. And I have great respect for him and his staff. And regardless of what has happened here, I don't think this is Malcolm's fault, but before the vote, Pauline was asked about it, and she said that she would probably vote for the bill.
Yeah, here's the clip. I'll play it so everyone can hear it.
I will have a look at those hate crime laws. Yes, I have actually voted against hate crime laws in the past, and more than likely will.
As in you won't support them, or you will support them?
No, I possibly will support the hate crime laws by all means. There shouldn't be hate crimes in Australia.
And mandatory minimum sentences, mandatory jail time for those. You support that?
Yes, I do. Yes, there has to be until we clean up our act.
She comes across as terribly confused and a bit out of place. I was trying to read Malcolm's facial expressions. He didn't give too much away, but he didn't look pleased either.
It wasn't normal Pauline, who's normally really arced up and on top of the issue. She seemed very confused about this issue.
Yes.
So I don't know what's going on there.
So that was I guess the first explanation, which was before they didn't vote against it, was that Pauline said that they were in favor of it. The next explanation came after Pauline was absent and Malcolm abstained. Now, in Parliament, that is effectively the same thing. If you're just not in the chamber, that's how you abstain. But Pauline apparently wasn't in the building. Malcolm was there for a previous vote, sort of within half an hour. So he has just tactically decided to not go into the chamber. And he was asked about it and effectively said, oh, look, of course I opposed the bill, but this was a major party stitch up. It was bipartisan. And there was no point standing in there and voting against it. There were going to be a bunch of amendments and I had to keep, swapping around. I had better things to do. And I thought potentially that was a bit of a weak excuse, but I know Malcolm does have some health issues. No one knows exactly what they are, but he's not at the peak of his powers.
Yeah.
And he's a great man and Pauline wasn't there. And I thought, look, you probably should have gone and voted against it, but I wasn't going to, rip him on that. But
Rennick did.
Yes, and so did our Victorian Senate candidate, Jordan Ditloff. But together with the Pauline Hanson video that I hadn't seen earlier, it looks worse. But then there were 2 other comments that came after that make it look even worse. So we've had 4 explanations here. Because later that day, he was his chief of staff at one point. He certainly still works for him. Richard Hopkins put out a tweet saying, everyone should stop attacking One Nation over this because there were good bits of the bill. So he wasn't saying that Malcolm didn't vote for it because, obviously he opposed it, but it was pointless. He was saying maybe the bill is good. Richard Hopkins, one of Malcolm Roberts' staffers, defended the bill. And he was saying, you guys should ask yourselves why Fatima Payman voted against a bill for mandatory sentencing of terrorists, which is part of the thing that was in the bill. So Richard Hopkins is trying to defend the bill. Then the following day, One Nation New South Wales puts out a tweet saying that Malcolm Roberts didn't vote for the bill because it was rushed through too quickly and he didn't know what was in it. So we've had Pauline Hanson say they're for the bill. Malcolm says they're against the bill but didn't bother voting against it. Richard Hopkins says the bill had good bits and bad bits. And then finally, One Nation New South Wales comes out and says they didn't vote for it because they didn't know what was in it at all. So these are 4 different stories. I smell a rat here, and whatever the rat is here, I don't blame Malcolm Roberts.
Who is New South Wales One Nation? I don't know. Do they
well,
exist?
whoever runs the Twitter account, right? So I know you're on their state executive. There's probably someone that you know from there.
I was. I don't know who's on there now.
It it was a short amendment to get across. Like I've seen some amendments and they're massive. Like some of the equality changes that Alex Greenwich has put through in New South Wales where they touch 15 different laws. This was really simple. Like I got across this one pretty quickly, and I'm not a policy.
No, it wasn't hard. So Malcolm has a lot of staff, and I know some of them. And the Malcolm staff I've met, I couldn't think more highly of them, including Richard, who I just mentioned, and Malcolm himself. Whatever's happened here, I don't blame Malcolm, and I probably don't blame Richard Hopkins either. But there is something weird that's gone on there, and I will also add, like what New South Wales One Nation said about it being rushed through. It is a bit of a pattern that anything regarding censorship or surveillance does seem to be rushed through and supported by both major parties. And people have started to speculate that maybe intelligence agencies are writing the bills.
Well, One Nation haven't taken a strong stand against some of these other bills and under 16s and so on from memory either. Like,
they voted against those, especially like Malcolm particularly was very good on it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, on the not being in there because it's busy and it's a stitch up, we're not going to pass anyway. I've heard Alex talk about that as well. Alex, like, I'm not going to go sit in there and listen to arguments for something we're not going to win. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to work in my office on things that matter. But he goes in there for the votes.
Yeah,
and he has his name counted on the record.
So, and I worked for John Ruddick. Like there were a couple of votes that he missed where it really wasn't going to matter. So the Greens have called a division on something, and it's like, do I really need to go down there and make the vote 40-3 instead of 39-3? But if something like this, like One Nation really campaigning on free speech, I think he should have done it. I was kind of willing to give him a pass, other than their 4 different explanations of why he didn't vote.
Okay, Realist Mama says, Stephen, you need to fire up Richard. He's looking sleepy. And then John the Boy says, too much wine. Neil Turner, welcome, Neil, says Richard Hopkins is on the New South Wales One Nation executive. So that's where he is.
So the New South Wales One Nation Twitter has put out a statement that was not entirely in line with what Richard Hopkins said on Twitter. So maybe they should talk more.
Here's a question for you, Rob. I've heard John Ruddick answer this. Realist Mama says, how about the Libertarians ask One Nation to join forces?
So we did put to One Nation the idea of, I guess, running some sort of split tickets where we divvied up the states. So we would say maybe in Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania, One Nation gets the top spot on the coalition ticket. And maybe in New South Wales and Victoria, the Libertarians do. There was also a version put out by Jordan Ditloff that had other parties in there and was over 2 cycles. And One Nation came back to us and said, this is probably a good idea for you minor parties, but we're a major party now. So you should go ahead and do that with Clyde Palmer, but we're going to run our own race. So they do that. So they effectively tell us, we're aligned on, maybe 75% of issues, but we're just going to run against each other. And then when we do run against them and call them out when they're not doing what they should, they call it infighting. Now it's only infighting if we're in the same party. It's not infighting if you want to run against us. You can't hold a position of being a bigger party and then tell us when we call you out, right? When we're not trying to attack you, we call you out when you don't do what you say. You can't call that infighting when you've also insisted we run against you when you're the bigger party.
You mentioned Malcolm Roberts' health. Do you think he'll make it to the next election?
I think he certainly intends to. Whether or not the One Nation bigwigs leave him there, that's up to them.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So I hope he does. Yeah. I think he's the best member of One Nation that they've got.
Would you accept him into the Libertarian Party?
Oh, absolutely. I always would have accepted Malcolm in the Libertarian Party. I remember when
I feel that Malcolm's like the Ron Paul of Australia.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things that he disagreed with Ron Paul on, but no, I love the guy. And I remember when he was on a politics in the pub thing with David Lionhelm and Andrew Laming, and they were getting asked questions from the crowd. And Malcolm Roberts several times actually demonstrated a greater grasp of libertarian literature than David Lionhelm, which surprised me at the time. And Lionhelm on a policy vote-by-vote basis would probably be slightly better than Malcolm in a libertarian way, but Malcolm used to be a Rothbardian anarcho-capitalist. He's not quite anymore. He's a little bit more pragmatic, but I love the guy. I'd welcome in the Libertarian Party no dramas.
I think
Diddley Maz says Malcolm and Rennick are running against each other, aren't they? Yes, and also Jim Wilmot, who's the Libertarian candidate in Queensland. It's going to be a tight race up there.
Yeah,
it's going to be tough.
Yep. All right, Richard, let's bring you in because let's talk about the by-elections down in Victoria that happened yesterday. This is the results in Werribee. Now, as you can see there, this is what's called a Melbourne Cup field where you have about 12 candidates, something ridiculous.
They even had Aidan McClendon, who's a councillor in Whittlesea, which is the other end of town.
Well, he got 236 votes, so
He didn't deserve more.
not a lot. But
Well, I think he beat our party, but
yeah, there's a lot of independents there. No, the Libertarians didn't seem to run in Werribee, but
oh no, you're looking at Werribee, right?
yeah, this is Werribee.
Yeah.
Now, a swing to the Liberals of 3.7%, a swing away from Labor of 16.7%, which is, that's not too good for the Labor Party.
Somewhat sobering, isn't it?
But it looks like they're still going to hold. So
no, the seat's in doubt, apparently. Rob and I were talking about it earlier.
Yeah, so last night it looked like the
still in
Liberals
doubt.
may take it, that they've had a look at the preferences more closely. Labor's ahead, but I don't think it's been called either way yet.
what do you think this means for the federal election?
Oh, nothing good for the Labor Party. But what I was surprised about was I thought this was more risk than Prahran. I thought the Labor Party had more chance of losing this than the Greens did of Prahran.
Yeah.
And I'm delighted to be wrong.
Well, this
I'm
is
just delighted.
This is the result in Prahran. So this has gone to the Liberal Party.
Yep.
They got a 5.5% swing. The Greens held. They've only gone backwards 0.6. But again, the Melbourne Cup field, plenty of independents there. The Libertarian candidate got 0.9%. Were you disappointed with that, Rob?
Look, as
Rob has very low expectations of Victorian Libertarians, don't you, Rob? Very low.
I'm not going to go into too much infighting here.
Yes, you are. Go on.
I did a minute ago say it's not actually infighting unless you're in the same party. I am in the same party as these Victorian Libertarians, so I will refrain from infighting too much.
Oh, but can't we start something?
I've probably already started enough with my fight with you earlier. I will say, in terms of before we get into my party or a different division of the party I'm in, to phrase it in a way that distances myself from them appropriately, the swing there, right? So you were saying that the Greens held and the Libs had a 5% swing. That was in the last election with the Labor Party running. So if you have a look at the two-party preferred between Green and Liberal, the Liberal Party had a 14.5% swing towards it in two-party preferred. That is a massive swing there.
Yeah.
So we're not just talking 5%. And that is why Richard and I as well thought that one was probably more likely to stay with the Greens. And they also this was a Green seat, and they had their sitting member of Parliament resign after an affair with a staffer, which after working in Parliament House for a while is not particularly uncommon.
It's not unnatural, is it?
No, so they must have been very confident that they were going to retain that seat by getting him to resign and forcing a by-election, and they were wrong. I certainly the actions of the Greens did not match this. That I'm pretty sure they thought, look, this guy hasn't been a great member. Maybe there's been like a factional assassination. We'll hold the seat anyway. We'll put in someone we like better, and they've lost the seat. Now they're probably going to lose it at the general election as well. So this is a big loss for the Greens.
Yeah.
So this is for the state parliament, but it does have implications. It's a guide for the federal election. How do you think Albo and Dutton are feeling tonight?
I'd like.
It's not so much about them; it's about the Greens. The Greens have not got traction here. That's really important because they keep saying and thinking that they're going to conquer the world and more's going to come to them and all this sort of stuff, and it hasn't.
Yeah, so I think
it just hasn't.
Sorry, Richard. I think the Brisbane Greens, those 3 seats they've got, they'll be looking at that and thinking, like at the federal election, that they're not so secure. So usually when the Greens have won a seat, they've ended up.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, they've ended up holding it and increasing their majority because before the Greens win, they're not really seen as like a winnable thing. After they win, people who maybe would have wanted to vote for the Greens but didn't see it as viable, start voting for them. But we've seen the opposite here. The Greens held the seat. Now they've lost it, right? That doesn't usually happen.
Yep.
So for the federal election, those three, what they call Greensland seats in sort of Brisbane CBD, they won't be liking that. I think in terms of Labor Liberal, a state by-election, look, it's something interesting to talk about. I don't think it'll actually have many implications or takeaways from the federal election. The New South Wales and Victoria do actually traditionally like to vote for like opposite leadership. So if New South Wales has state Liberal, they vote for federal Labor, and vice versa. So does Victoria through history. It's a weird thing that they do. So I'm not sure that that's going to have big implications for the like Labor Liberal split. But if you're looking at the Queensland Greens, they're not going to be liking this result at all in Prahran.
No.
Dillymaz says, that's it, Storchy. Whisper those sweet nothings. Tell me how the Greens are failing. Well, you mentioned, so John the Boy mentioned how Advance Australia is targeting the Greens with this Greens Truth campaign. Do you think that's cutting through?
Not yet.
Mm.
To the extent that it will.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Given this is Victoria, Stan, I'm still shocked that on that Werribee result, it's still like after preferences, like so primary and preference wise, 48% of the vote still backed in the Greens. Like that's still a shockingly huge amount of people.
That was Prahran, not Werribee.
Sorry, Prahran. In Werribee though, they still had a swing towards the Greens. If you bring up the Werribee result, the Greens had a 0.8 swing towards them.
That's the dimensions of a beast.
No, it's worse than that, Dave. And let's bring it back up. You're talking about the Greens getting a
the
swing
Victorian Socialists.
Yeah, look at the Victorian Socialists.
Yes.
Here it is. Sue Munro. She got 7.3% of the vote.
Yeah,
the Socialists.
And so when you got guys like Pingers hanging out with her as well, who's going up against Jordan Ditloff in the Senate.
Yeah,
who's Pingers?
Sorry,
Purple Pingers is the Victorian Socialist candidate,
the squatter bloke who's advocating property theft.
Yeah.
Solve homelessness.
Yeah. We're gonna play him on the podcast last time, I think, but I watched a few of his videos and I just couldn't get through it. It was horrible.
It's horrific. But yeah, I mean, there's still concerns that and this is the issue with the mindset some people have about the Uniparty and Liberals and Labor are the same, and they go, they're either planning to waste their vote and go and donkey vote or informal. There's so many people like at the local elections that we just had in my block council seat. I think we had like a 20% informal rate. It's just shocking out in Western Sydney.
Well, people without brains shouldn't vote.
Well, but the fact that the people still think the Greens are a reasonable alternative. So hopefully the advanced messaging gets through. Because
I'll say it again: people without brains shouldn't vote.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do hope that the advanced messaging will ramp up more close to the election, especially after they call the election. But what we're seeing here in Werribee, like advance can scream and tell people that the Greens are socialists. We're seeing here in Werribee that some people think that's a good thing. So we're working on the assumption, and I think it's been true, and I think it's become less true over time, that people vote for the Greens and they think they're voting to save the koalas, and what they get is sort of Bernie Sanders. But what we're seeing in some of these seats now, like Victorian Socialists getting votes, if you go and Advance goes and shouts with a megaphone telling everyone the Greens are socialists, like they might get more votes, right?
Or they'll vote for actual socialists. Themselves socialists.
Well, yes, it's like Victorian Socialists aren't going to run in every seat, especially outside Victoria. But you will get. I think as time has gone on, so the Greens vote has kind of stagnated, but I think their vote has kind of just changed, right? So that it was for a while an environmental protest vote, and I think Advance are trying to make sure that no one thinks it's that anymore, and it's good cause. But I think as time has gone on, the people voting for them more and more realize that it's not an environmental protest vote, that they're voting for like a hard left party. And 12-15% of people want a hard left party.
Some still think it's environment. Like I was handing out how to vote opposite a Greens lady.
Certainly are
and she still was totally in for all the climate stuff and going for that gear. So there's still that. I think.
What they pitch on the booth, right? So Greens volunteers, right? They're probably that they
trained for that.
Yeah, that they pray at the altar of Joseph Stalin, but they'll say go and save the koalas, right? When they hand out a how to vote. right? We all do that a bit, us volunteers.
So I think we can't rely on advance though, and something I don't pray at Justin Stalin.
No. We lead with our most popular policies.
But here's the question I want to. Yeah, you go.
Sorry, I just want to finish that thought. We can't rely on advance. And then, as you probably heard me say on Awakened Aussies a lot, and I say on my own show as well, we need our audiences on these shows to be having conversations, break the taboo, screw the whole, you can't talk about politics. We need Australians to be talking about politics. We need them to be talking about how crazy Greens policies are and how destructive they are for Australia with their friends and families and social groups and sporting clubs and whatnot, because so many Aussies are not plugged in. They're hearing the news on Triple M on the radio in the car, or they're watching Channel 9 or The Project, heaven forbid. And that's where they're getting their news from. And so they're not aware. And they'll see advanced things. They'll just go, oh, that's propaganda, like political advertising.
That'll happen anyway, because this year we'll have a hung parliament, and that will galvanise people to be highly critical of the politicians for putting us in the position where we don't have a viable government.
But here's my big question.
That will get people talking about politics.
We need it before the election.
Here's my big question for you, Dave. I mean,
there might be two elections.
Albo has failed on every policy
standpoint.
He's a terrible campaigner, and he's led a terrible government.
A bad leader.
Don't you think Dutton should be miles ahead?
Exactly.
So what's gone wrong? I know the teals are a big factor.
Your expectations are entirely unrealistic.
Why?
Because the kettle is still boiling. You know, you're expecting to be able to make a cup of tea straight away.
Just come a bit closer.
You're expecting to be able to make a cup of tea straight away, and it's just not going to go.
Well, it's been 3 years. It's been a long time of failure.
3 years in political lifespan is halfway
yes,
there.
I know that, but he's not going in there with a huge majority. He's only on 76 seats. I mean, Albo should be well within striking distance.
Because
I mean, the Teals make it very, very difficult. I will admit that. But
all right, I just quit the party. So and not that that ever stopped me. Not that that ever stopped me from telling people what I thought, right? And I even got comments going, Dave, you were a member of the Liberal Party? I know from your content, I would have had no idea. So I was like, okay. That was part of the galvanizing for me that I needed to move on. Yeah. But he's not coming out hard enough and actually taking a stand. He's because of the left influences in the party, and this is one of the issues I have with the party, is because you've got all the moderate faction and so on that sort of pulled the party so far to the left that he's I think it's a death by 1,000 cuts. He won't make hard stands for risk of losing the leadership because he thinks, if I lose it, someone else worse will get in. But in that series of compromises to hold on to the top job, what's the point of being there? Because you compromise so much to appease the moderate left that's the problem. The party, a house divided upon itself cannot stand. And I think that's the issue because he's scared of, the spill and the moderates and the lefties in the party. He won't take a hard stand. He won't drive clear policy until they do the market research group and it comes out, I think the people might be happy with this one. So I'll take a gentle stand. Even the women's sports stuff, he's barely backing that. Like all the gender ideology stuff.
I think you're absolutely right, but you're missing one particular thing, and that is that if he goes any harder than he does, he risks two things. First of all, a revolt from within.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is he risks distracting the attention from his enemy whilst he's making a mistake. And that in
I'm tired of small target politics, though. Every election we have like this sort of small target thing. Don't we? You want like a Trump style, come in, here is what I will deliver. I'm Australia first. Here's the big idea.
It's not that kind of election. This is an election which is going to be very narrow.
But does it have to be very narrow?
It's coming 3 years too early. Albo thought that he was in for 2 terms. All his planning was on having 6 years in the job.
Mm-hmm.
And Dutton's planning was, hey, maybe I can put him under pressure in this election. And he's done that. He's already got a substantive victory. What he doesn't want is to lose that by overstretching himself. He doesn't have that much in the way of resources. He's got a B-grade team because he's only got 55 members and a couple of senators.
Well, here's a big question for you, Richard. Is this the election that Dutton wants to win?
He definitely wants to win it, but whether he's going to quite make it or not is another question. And Rob and I were talking about that.
But is it better for him to lose?
In a lot of ways, it would be.
Do you think, and I don't think I've ever seen this in my lifetime, so you're talking about the hung parliament double election, if they can't form a minority government. Does that force us back to the polls for a whole re-election?
It may not be that clear cut. It may be something much more messy and debilitating
Resignations and
and
by-elections
drawn out, and with by-elections and defections.
There might even
all
end up
sorts
a
of stuff.
double disillusion over it. But
Yeah.
I think that this is a fantasy Richard scenario because he loves following elections so much. He just wants to have two of them.
I'm guilty. I'm definitely guilty. I want to see the pain. I want to see the blood.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think we will get like a hung parliament, but I think the Teals and other independents and Greens will back one side or the other. So I think we will get a hung parliament. I think we're probably going to end up
disagree
with
entirely, and I've put my money on the table.
How many Teals are going to keep their seat? That's another question. How many Teals will keep their seat? Have they done enough?
I think they'll get all of them. They might even
not a chance.
Victorian Teals.
You don't understand that. I don't think they've gone. Maybe in Victoria they might go backwards.
Yeah, New South Wales Teals are all winning. Yeah, I think they'll increase their numbers in New South Wales. I think Bradfield. Victorian Teals are a bit of a different animal.
Western Australia.
Well, they've only got one there. But
do
you think they'll win Bradfield?
I do think they'll win Bradfield. Yeah.
Yeah. Sadly, I agree.
Yeah. Well, that means I'm still going to be swamped by them. All right. The federal election is coming up. Rob, here's your opportunity to pitch because hopefully we can highlight some good libertarians on candidates on this podcast going forward. We'll bring up your website. This is the New South Wales Libertarian website, and you can see that by the branding, which I started off the show by saying I definitely agree with. The good thing I like about this is that you've got the economy number one. I feel that's the libertarians' bread and butter. It's what your focus should be on. Maybe it's because I grew up in the John Howard era, because every election he ever went to, he always focused on the economy and who do you trust on the economy. What do you have? What's the libertarian vision? What's your policy economically?
Well, I guess it would be similar to Elon Musk's DOGE. We want to dramatically reduce the role of government in your life. And if we do that, we can dramatically reduce your taxes.
So you've got here that you would raise the tax-free threshold to 50,000 for individuals and 100,000 for couples indexed to inflation. And you'll move towards a low flat tax rate of 10% on income above the tax-free threshold. So, and then also reduce the company tax rate to 0%. It's pretty ambitious policy. Some people might be saying, how are you going to fund that? Where's the government going to get its revenue from?
Well, it's not going to get its revenue.
It won't exist.
Yes. No, the government should be far less involved in your life. Like you've had a look at just Elon Musk has just started in the US, having a look at USAID and looking at the dramatic waste there. So even before we start getting into cutting government services and saying, look, you've got more money, you can have a user pay system for those, which we do believe in. Even before we get to that, there is a lot of fat to cut. So if we had a libertarian government and we had a Department of Government Efficiency, and I'll give One Nation a plug here, that they found $90 billion worth of cuts like that the other day when they spent like a couple of hours looking at it. Now they did also say after we've cut that 90 billion, we're going to reinvest 40 billion of that in new spending, which you can't have a DOGE in new spending. So bad job, One Nation.
Was that on or off budget? Was it on or off budget?
No, it was on budget.
Million.
Yeah,
so all on budget. They didn't look at off budget.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I love your point. The fact that you don't need to fund it; it's just less income. Because that's one of the things I'm so annoyed at the Labor government at the moment with the tax-free threshold, the lunches thing. The way they're saying funding free lunches. Where are you going to fund the free lunches for? No, you're just stealing less of our money. Like a tax break is not funded by the taxpayer. It just means the government gets less income, so they have to work within their means.
Oh yeah, the whole idea that you have to fund a tax cut. No, you don't. You just have to spend less money.
Yes,
right?
100%.
And that Dutton policy, it's probably bad PR. I'm not sure where he got it from. Like that could have been something he just actually did without announcing because it wasn't going to be very popular. But he's not actually advocating for taxpayer-funded lunches.
No, not at all.
He's just saying
live from the Labor
small
Party.
businesses that actually spend their money outside the premises at restaurants or whatever for business lunches, that they can deduct it from their taxable income. Because at the moment, large businesses, what they do is they just hire catering companies, right, to come into their premises and they deduct that. So small businesses are getting ripped off that way. And they're not saying we're going to actually give you the money. We're just saying that the money you earn will come off your profits that we tax you on, right? So anyway, that's not a libertarian policy to argue. We agree with it, but yes, that's a liberal policy.
Here's the next one, money. This one's interesting. You want to have more focus on gold and silver and also Bitcoin. But here it says restrict the focus of the Reserve Bank and in brackets while it exists. Yeah, I really like the sound of that. What do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, as a Ron Paul guy, he was famous for saying in the Fed, and we don't think we can end the Reserve Bank immediately or within one term of government, but most libertarians are skeptical of central banking at all. So, you know, your savings are depleted. The value of your money is depleted by the government just putting more into circulation whenever they feel like it. And we saw that especially during COVID, and we can hear all the boogeyman stories about, you know, big corporations or whatever, price gouging. The reason we have very high inflation at the moment is because for a while the government made it illegal to be productive and then paid big corporations to not sack people. That is why we've got high inflation. So, you know, the inflation is caused by too much money chasing too few goods. And we made creating goods illegal and sacking people illegal.
You're talking about during the COVID.
That's why we've got high inflation, right? And we couldn't have done that if we had sound money. So if we had a sound money system, so the Reserve Bank, while it exists,
so would you move to a gold standard, for example?
Like potentially. So the policy is to recognize gold as a legitimate currency. So at the moment, it's not recognized as a currency; it's just recognized as an asset, which means you have to pay capital gains tax on it, and you can't pay your taxes with it, and all sorts of things. So gold and silver and Bitcoin, we would recognize as legitimate currencies, and we would make sure that the Reserve Bank was focused on, instead of what it's focused on now, it's focused on a target of no inflation.
So you could pay your tax with Bitcoin.
You could, yeah.
Okay.
I rather like the disruptive aspect of going to the tax department and paying them in gold.
Yes. Well, if we recognize it as currency and not an asset, if you own the government, if you owed the government money in some way, whether it's tax or a fine or whatever, you could pay it in gold or silver or Bitcoin. But that is
that's
kind
very
of
appealing, you know.
That's not really the point. That was
just,
you know,
to me.
that would be funny to do. But the real point, right, is if we had sound money, your savings wouldn't devalue over time. So at the moment, you can't just save money, right? Because, you know, $20 5 years ago is not worth $20 today. And that is because of inflation. And we're all taught that, some inflation is okay, and if inflation goes too high, it's not good. That's only really true in a fiat system. If we had actual sound money, right, you could just actually save money, and it would probably be worth more later and not less. And this sort of unsound fiat currency system we've got now really hurts average people and lower income earners and people who are just trying to save for their retirement, because they can't do that. They're forced into investing. It inflates property prices because everyone puts more money into superannuation firms or investment firms, and all they do is invest in property. And then the government doesn't want that entire pyramid scheme to collapse, so property prices have to keep going up. A lot of the problems in our sort of economic system are tied to the fact that we don't have sound money.
Yeah. Okay. So energy policy, that's your next point. So under the energy policy, you say that you enforce a no bans, no subsidies policy to bring competition into the market. Is what you're really saying that you're not going to be giving subsidies to renewables and you're going to lift the ban on nuclear?
Yes, that's effectively what it means. And some people, you know, especially shills from the Australia Institute and the teals, will say that we actually give so many subsidies to, you know, mining companies and, you know, Gina Reinhardt, and we don't tax gas enough. What they're actually saying is that we don't charge them super taxes. There are very few actual subsidies to traditional energy sources. And I certainly believe if we just removed all the subsidies and bans, that coal and nuclear and a bit of gas would rule the day. And if I'm wrong and renewables were cheaper, then so be it. But I don't think they are. I think they're massively more expensive.
But Rob, I mean, the left constantly propagandize the diesel tax rebate as being a fossil fuel subsidy.
Yes,
I
because
mean, they misrepresent everything.
yes. So it's a
And
classic.
It's so annoying because you cannot have a responsible debate with any of them because they do not accept factual reality.
Yeah, and it's what Dave was getting at a couple of minutes ago. The left conflate stealing less money from taxpayers with giving them more money. It's not the same thing, right? So if I go to your house, viewer at home, and steal $20 from you every day, and then one day I only go there and steal $10 from you, I have not given you a $10 subsidy. I've just stolen $10 less from you. And that's the difference between a tax cut and a subsidy.
So no
Well
subsidy
done.
for nuclear either, because obviously the Liberal plan is that
Yeah,
they want
so-
to build and have government-owned nuclear plant.
Yeah, we just want to unban it, and it does short circuit the Labor argument that it's too expensive and it's not viable and no one will want to do it. If that's true, then okay, no one will do it. We just want to lift the ban, right? And so Labor should be open to lifting the ban, because if what they were saying was true, no private company would want to come in and do it. But they won't lift the ban, which shows you there's something fishy going on.
Yeah, I did a podcast with a guy from Copenhagen Atomics, Thomas Jan Pedersen, it was his name, and their plan is to build these molten salt thorium reactors. They'd bring them to Australia, they'd fund them themselves, they'd operate them themselves, and then take the profit at the end. Would you be open to something like that, where they incur all the risk, but they take the reward?
Absolutely, yeah. So as long as it was viable in the market, right? So if they did that, they're quite like, I'd be quite happy for them to do it. But if they tried to then sell the energy onto the grid that the Australians were buying, and it was more expensive than what they're already paying,
Say
like,
80 cents a kilowatt hour. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like no one would buy it,
Yeah.
right? So if
So
it
they
was,
have to be
Well,
competitive.
it'd be like
yeah,
a
well,
wind-
because I wouldn't make them legally be competitive, but if they weren't, no one would buy anything.
Exactly.
From
No,
them.
that's what I'm
But
saying.
at
They
the
have to be.
moment-
Hey, shut up.
Yeah.
They have to be competitive to be, to be in the marketplace.
Exactly.
They're not going to exist otherwise.
That's not true. The wind farms aren't competitive. We're paying 56 cents a kilowatt hour for them.
There's no subsidies. But there's no subsidies.
But
I'm talking about the
there doesn't need to be.
libertarians.
They're getting their
utopia.
money from putting the costs on the end user.
You shut up and have some more wine.
Richard, he's talking about what would happen under our policy. So under our policy,
I agree.
whichever energy source was cheaper would win out. So there's lots of arguments out there, and people are just guessing. It's like coal's cheaper, no windmills. Like, we will find out what's cheaper if we get the government out of it and let private sector compete. That's when we'll find out what's cheaper.
Dilly Maz says, "Stop talking sense. The masters don't like it." And John the Boy asking Rob a question: do the Libertarians see themselves as working to become a new major party, or rather to keep the majors in check?
So certainly one step at a time. So at the moment, we want to see ourselves kind of as the Greens of the right. So if you have a look at what the Greens have done to Australian politics, they have dragged the Labor Party to the left, and with the Labor Party going to the left, the Liberals have gone to the left as well, because they don't have an anchor on the right. So we want to be a 10 to 15% party to keep the Liberals in check. And whatever happens from there, happens from there. If we do that to keep the Liberals in check, and they sort of ignore us and they keep chasing, what they perceive as the center, which, I would consider the far left, then they'll keep bleeding votes to us. And we may have something like we've just seen in the UK in the recent polls, where Reform have like doubled the vote of the Tories in the polls. I'd be quite happy if the Libertarian Party did that. But our primary goal right now is to provide the Liberal Party with an anchor to keep them closer to what they were founded to do. And
I disagree. Absolutely.
Hold on.
And he's not a member. So
I need to say this before I'm cutting in on you, Richard. Realist Mama says, "What sort of libertarian is Richard? Paleo, vegan, or omnivore?"
Definitely carnivore.
Carnivore. You're a carnivore libertarian. Okay. All right. Let's move on. You want to make a point?
Yeah, I want to make a point. I mean, what Rob was talking about was, the left-right paradigm, which I don't subscribe to. It's like the Libertarian Party is a centrist party, and it's anti-authoritarian. It's neither left nor right. And we might have some sort of appearances as a right of centre party, but that's actually not the case.
The New South Wales Libertarian Party is right wing.
No, it's not.
Policy director.
All right, let's go. Let's move on to to education, because I don't know if this one sounds right wing or it could be, I don't know what it sounds like, but it says empower families to choose their children's education with a school voucher system that allows funding to follow the child. That doesn't sound very straightforward. Do you want to explain what that means?
Well, at the moment, so it's mainly a state government thing, right? So firstly, we want to abolish the federal Department of Education because it doesn't hire any teachers. So just what they've done in the US.
Doesn't run any schools either.
Exactly, right? So the federal Department of Education, it says it provides strategic leadership, which means it hires a bunch of bureaucrats to write reports to show to other bureaucrats. So the federal policy, basically, what we want to do is abolish the Department of Education. But broadly in the party, we support an education voucher system. So instead of only the kids of rich parents being able to go to a private school, effectively everyone would be able to go to a private school, and the government, instead of funding schools run by woke bureaucrats and getting told if you live in this area and you want to go to a public school, you have to go to this one. The parents will be able to choose to send their kids to any school with the voucher, and the schools would compete with each other for the money. So the government would say, you've got this voucher that, let's say that the government usually spends, $80,000 per year per child. Let's just say that that's the number. It might be higher or lower. Let's say that's the number. Each parent would have an $80,000 voucher to give to whatever school they wanted to send their child there.
Wouldn't that effectively make all schools private schools?
Absolutely. So instead of only rich kids going to private schools, everyone would.
It gets rid of the catchment areas, right? And it forces competition. So in the public system, the schools would actually have to be good. The teachers would actually have to deliver results.
Yeah, they'd be subject to KPIs.
Yeah.
Everyone would be able to afford to go to a private school in our system.
Okay. Oh, excuse me.
And the thing is, there's this illusion that public education is free. No, it's not. It costs about 20 grand per year per student in secondary school. And that's actually more than it costs in a private school.
If you go back in time, schools were started by the churches. The Christian churches started schooling to educate children. And then the government, like everything else, went, oh, we'll take that over. Thank you very much.
No, it should be a secular education system.
Right. They took over the hospitals. They took over the schools. They took over the
And it's like whenever they intervened, the public had to pay more for the same service.
And you take out that community engagement, you take out the volunteerism aspects of some of these things, and so then you abdicate everything to the state becomes bigger.
And you have bureaucrats, more.
And you become more reliant on the state, you break down community cohesion.
Yeah.
Okay, let's power through the last few. So you've got a policy on women and children. Why do you think it's important to focus on women and children?
We think especially anti-discrimination law has been really weaponized against women and children from being able to have their own spaces, especially due to, what I would call trans insanity and other people might have nicer terms for it. If we have a look at tickle versus giggle, right? Something like that. So if someone wants to have a space that's confined to biological women, we think they should be allowed to do that. Now, that would also include sporting organizations that, want to sort of segregate based on biology. We think they should be allowed to do that. And currently, they're not allowed. So we're not trying to really impose anything on anyone and saying you have to segregate based on biology. We're just saying you should be allowed to. You should be allowed to set your own rules for whatever sporting competition you want, whatever bathroom you want.
Don't you think that's very limp? Really? I mean, someone's either a male or a female. And if they're one or the other, they shouldn't be in the other one's changing rooms. That's just...
Well, okay. Well, if it's my changing room, I'll decide who goes in it, right?
Except if you're a vulnerable female, in which case a male purporting to be a female can enter your...
Well, exactly. So at the moment, these trans activists are deliberately doing that and then using the Sex Discrimination Act to sue them. And we want to reverse that. That's our point.
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't clear.
Which is not advocating any force or violence against the trans community.
No, absolutely not. And if someone wants to set up a trans inclusive space, they can do that as well. But
they're in their own sports league.
Yeah, but they can do that. Now, I don't think they'd be very popular if you wanted to have a trans inclusive or trans only sports league or trans only dating app. But if you want to set one up, go for gold.
I think there is a trans-only dating app, but anyway,
Is it very popular?
I don't know.
No.
Not my scene.
Okay, immigration. Now, I've heard some people throw around the thing that libertarians are open borders, but then I've heard John Ruddock saying that he wants a pause on immigration. What is the actual policy?
So there are two problems with our immigration system at the moment. One is how many, right? So at the moment that you just say there's two? Okay, anyway. Yes, one problem is how many people are coming in. At the moment, it's too many. The other problem is how we choose the people who come in. So that the policy really tries to hit at the root issue, which is the second problem there. How we're choosing who comes in is resulting in it being too many. Firstly, because if we leave it to bureaucrats are corruptible and incompetent. And if we have a points-based system, what we end up with is a bunch of very highly qualified doctors and engineers from the Indian subcontinent who end up Uber drivers, instead of actually filling the labor shortages we have. So when you let bureaucrats decide who comes here, you end up with the wrong sort of immigrants. And then if you're not actually filling the labor shortages we have, there's more demand and more pressure to actually let more in. So we've ended up with mass immigration because we're letting the wrong ones in. And some of that is because we're letting bureaucrats pick instead of markets. And some of that is because we're a signatory to a bunch of treaties that force us to take refugees off the global queue. And we want to reverse both those things.
But you missed the most important point, which is that we don't have enough diversity in our Uber drivers.
Yes, well...
Okay, there's three final ones: free speech, privacy, and also foreign affairs. Is anything of those final three policies that you would like to highlight?
So I think I've already spoken about free speech and foreign affairs a bit. So free speech we tackled earlier with the hate speech laws. We're free speech absolutists. Foreign affairs, we want the Australian government to just stay out of foreign entanglements. We want to withdraw from treaties and alliances and stop, involving ourselves in foreign conflicts. So
you would look to repeal the hate speech crimes amendment that just went through?
Absolutely. We even the previous hate speech laws we don't support. So yes, absolutely. So free speech in particular, we would actually support having a referendum to enshrine like a US First Amendment style thing in our constitution.
But 18C is still the main game, isn't it?
Yes, so we do have a particular policy to repeal 18C, but I would say, personally, I would like to withdraw the Racial Discrimination Act entirely, not just 18C. That's not a party policy, but it is a New South Wales party policy at a state level to repeal all anti-discrimination laws and replace them with nothing.
Yeah, well, instinctively, I'm very sympathetic to allowing laws that allow anyone to insult anyone anytime.
Yes. And if it's your property and you want to discriminate on your property, that's why we have property. So on Mother's Day, like you don't buy Steve's mother a present, you buy your own. That's very discriminatory. Discrimination can sometimes be a good thing.
Okay, Dave, now you've just left the Liberal Party. What did you think about the Libertarian platform?
I think there's a lot to like about it. Like I said, I'm not signing up. I know there's a membership form in Rob's bag that he wants me to fill out before I leave here.
I need a fellow dissenter. You must.
No. I think especially given what I do as online political commentary, there's a bit of use for me personally in just staying a little bit neutral from an audience engagement point of view as well. And keeping everyone honest. And I know, and I addressed this in my video, I advocate, get involved. You got to get out there, join a party, get involved. And I'm not changing that perspective because not everyone's an online commentator. Not everyone's doing opinion commentary like I am. And there's a lot of merit in finding who is it your local Libertarian candidate or One Nation or Kata or whoever party. Understand what it is that they actually are going to vote for that you care about and get involved. And then go and support that person. Hand out their how to votes. Help work on the polling booths and stuff. Elections, I don't know if most people that don't do it don't know that the people that stand there on the booth, they're all volunteers. Like people aren't paid to be there. They're giving up their own time.
The teals are.
The teals maybe, okay. Clive Palmer used to pay people too. So.
And you need a lot of people. You need a lot of people, especially with pre-poll going for like 2 weeks now, with all the booths to cover, to have someone
2 weeks
there.
Is ridiculous.
It's insanity, the number of people you need. So the individual candidates do need help. So I'm saying still get out there and get involved. And I will find individual candidates and get involved and support different people in different elections. Which I never did before joining a party. So, post-party day, we'll still get out there, but I'm not beholden to supporting the candidate in my party, in my region, that I may or may not have strong feelings for or against. I'm now a free agent to cross borders and support where I think my time can be best.
I like being a free agent. I think you're more effective as a free agent. That's my view.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to. There is a danger with. I mean, everything you said. Sounded great, Rob. I think there's a danger that when people are looking for different parties during a federal election, they're going to go to the federal site. They're not going to look at the New South Wales site. Now, this is the Federal Libertarian site, and as you can see, it's a completely different looking site. You got Jordan Ditloff and Jim Wilmot there. Jim Wilmot is a good friend of mine. I'm a little bit concerned there's no Craig Kelly there. Is there a reason for that?
I think that was just designed before we'd announced him. So I will ask them to rectify it. Another reason might be just because we have our own New South Wales site. So, but I will inquire. Yeah.
And so the policies on this site are similar to what you're proposing on the New South Wales site?
Yeah. So the dot points are almost identical. Some of the preambles are different. So that was on the federal website. It was designed by the Federal Policy Committee and the Federal Campaign Committee. So I'm on the Federal Policy Committee. So each state is allowed to change how they pitch the policies, but we are bound by the same policies across the country.
Okay. All right.
And when I interviewed Jordan from Victoria a few weeks ago, very, very similar alignment on the issues that we've actually crossed over.
So it's still the same 9 headings. All the dot points are almost exactly the same. So on the New South Wales website that you went through, I kind of wrote the preambles. So that's just how we pitch them in each state might be slightly different, but we are pitching the same underlying.
It's the same with the major parties. They have different divisions in different states.
Look, I mean, I make sure, and I haven't read the New South Wales ones, but the way the Victorians are pitching the immigration policy is confusing the heck out of people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, some feedback that needs some work. I kind of get where you're going in the multiple levers and how they stack up to support each other, but there's over simple that people go, why aren't you just saying shut the borders?
Yeah. So if you just stick with the same system we've got now and say the number should be lower or it should be 0 for a few years or whatever, it doesn't actually fix the underlying problem. So we want to actually fix the underlying problem. So we have a long-term good immigration platform. And I agree, it's not always explained very well in Victoria, and that's not always Jordan's fault because he lives in the division where he has to say things a certain way. It is what it is.
No, it's very much changing the incentives.
Yeah.
I understand it. Yeah.
Oh, well, Rob, thank you very much for coming in here tonight. And
yes, thank you for having me.
Hopefully we've rectified some of the issues that needed rectifying because of this man here, Mr. Storch.
Yes,
but hopefully we can have a
baby killer Richard. Yes,
yeah. Hopefully we can have a few more libertarians on as we head into the election. I wouldn't have probably said that a few months ago, but maybe we're on friendlier terms now, which is good. But
we'll see how this one rates. If it rates how the previous libertarian episodes, well, I'm sure you'd be calling me all the time.
You know what? The ones that rate the highest is when Sam Buno is here.
Yes, well,
oddly,
Sam Buno and a libertarian. Now that's
that's a disaster. That's why he's not here tonight, by the way. Okay, so Dave has played this game, but this is the most important part of the podcast. It's called Build Your Own Fantasy Government. Now, Rob, you're in control of the next Parliament of Australia, and you can choose 5 or 6 people. They can be living or dead. They don't necessarily have to be politicians, but they're your leadership group to head up the next Parliament of Australia. Who do you choose?
So I'd probably go with Ron Paul. You said living or dead. I'd like a slightly younger Ron Paul, but he'd be number 1 there. He was a champion for liberty, brought so many people with him, and he knows how to bring, I guess, more generic right wingers with him as well. So not everyone who likes Ron Paul's a libertarian. He could bring people with him. I think what Elon Musk is doing with the DOGE at the moment, I'd want him to keep doing that. So I'd probably want to bring Elon over to Australia to help with that. Just trying to think beyond that, John Humphrey's the founder of our party, legend, wouldn't be here without him. I would go to him for any piece of advice of terms of doing anything that was going to have any serious impact on anyone. So whether or not he was in that cabinet, I would be asking him stuff. So I might as well give him a title.
He is a fearsome economic commentator as well.
He is.
Yeah, he's just unbelievable.
Connie says Ramaswamy.
Yes. No, Vivek is great. So I have already. I've given a couple from the US. So I'm not going to try and they're both actually in DOGE as well. So I don't want to stack it out too much with US people who've only got 5 or 6. If Vivek applied, I'd take him. So good suggestion, Connie. Just trying to think who else of people I know. So John Humphreys would be great. John Ruddick is a great front man to explain ideas to people. So I know that there are a lot of people who aren't libertarians but really like John Ruddick and vote for our party.
Gemma is the foreign minister. What do you think?
Gemma is foreign minister. So Gemma's just made a comment I can see, but I can't.
Gemma says, "Can you play our animation to your audience?" Well, I can, but I don't. I guess I'm now going to have to search the Facebook to try and find it.
I could probably find it for you pretty quickly.
Is it on the Facebook or is it on the Instagram?
It would be So it'd be on our. If you go to the New South Wales Facebook, it's one of our pinned posts. So I think we've got
makes it easy. Oops.
We've got 2 or 3 pinned, and one of them is that.
This is a good test to see how quickly Stephen can do things on.
That's
while I'm trying to talk and also read comments and do all the producing as well. Is it this one here?
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's.
Yeah, you're kidding us.
I think Gemma did this, right? Didn't she?
She did. So she wrote the storyboard and got an animator to produce the animation, and then her and her husband did the sound effects and the music. So it's certainly it's 80% Gemma's baby, and it's great. So we should show it.
Authorised by Gemma Niosi for the Libertarian Party, Sydney.
Okay, that's enough libertarianism for one episode. All right, now Dave, you do a great channel as well. Please plug all your stuff as well, because everyone. I noticed that you're getting a lot of big views at the moment.
I think
you're catching on.
The hate speech stuff hit a nerve and
cutting up your Liberal Party card over whatever, right?
Resonated a little bit. That one went all right. So I mean, YouTube's a fickle beast, right? Thumbnails and titles matter so much, and growing the audience just to get the reach is good. So appreciate everyone who's recently followed me.
There he is. Rip it.
Totally real card.
I wish I could have ripped mine, but I got kicked out too quick. So.
Well, it was tough because my branch is great, and there's great guys in my branch. I had to message them and sort of say, "Sorry, I'm out." It's not personal. You guys actually kept me here longer than I would have otherwise.
Steve, you got kicked out so quick they probably wouldn't have even given you a card yet. Is that right?
No, I was in there. I don't even know. Maybe about a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dave right now on X, YouTube, Rumble for the live stream interviews I do. I do podcast interviews, and the Awaken Aussies on Thursday nights at 9 p.m, which is a panel show. Not in person. We all dial into that one, but we try and keep that one to an hour as well. And mix the panel up and discuss the big issues each week on the Awakened Aussies show as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you everyone for watching. Please share this out. The federal election is heating up. If you're a candidate and you'd like a platform, and we're going to start hosting some candidates from whatever party that you're from. You don't have to be Libertarian. You can be One Nation. You can be Liberal. You can be Labor. You can be whatever you want to be. Let us know. You can contact me at Command the Narrative at outlook.com. And I'd also like to stage some debates. I don't know if the Libertarians are up for some debates between some of the other candidates.
Always.
Yes.
Well, we're up for debates between our own
He's
candidates.
not a member, right? Whenever Richard says yes, it's like, he's not a member. He's not a member. He doesn't speak on behalf of the party.
We can send a Libertarian candidate, and if you can't find someone from another party for them to debate, we'll send another Libertarian candidate that can debate that.
Victoria versus New South Wales.
Okay.
That would be fun.
Yeah. That would be fun.
Yeah. Oh,
Steve Payton, I challenge you to debate.
All right. Well, this one's been a great one tonight. 2 hours went very quickly, and a lot of interaction from the audience. We love you, the audience, so thank you very much. Remember, head to commandingthenarrative.com and sign up to the newsletter to keep up to date with all our content. And for now, it's thank you and good night, and we'll see you all next time.
Well done, the audience.
See you all.